Well, hello. It's okay to get started. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Replicon, and I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today in our webinar entitled Meet the Compliance Technology Experts, which will feature a live demo and a Q&A. My colleague Scott Baio, who's the Director of Solutions Engineering at Replicon. In this webinar, we'll be discussing the topic of compliance, specifically for time and attendance, and with a particular focus around absence management. We're going to be looking at some of the challenges companies face and how a solution like Replicon can help mitigate non-compliance risks as well as increase productivity. 30-minute format to get you information quickly and allow you to get on with your day. So during the majority of the webinar today, Scott will be focusing on a product demonstration. But before that, I'd like to give you a quick overview of Replicon and set some background around compliance. However, I wanted to go over just a few housekeeping items. In order to participate in today's webinar, you'll be kept on mute during the presentation to ensure we have a flow and a quiet presentation. But however, you can submit your questions at any time during this presentation by using the Q&A text box. We'll be answering the questions at the end. The box is located at the right panel of your screen, and you can ask questions there. Any questions for the moderator regarding connectivity or able to hear correctly, you can put those into the chat box. So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started? So by giving you a little bit of background about Replicon, in case you're not familiar with us, we're the leader in cloud time tracking applications. You can see here our solutions are used very broadly by many different people across the world. We have over 1.5 million users, the solution across over 7,800 customers. We're using our solutions to manage time and attendance, manage their workforce, as well as keep track of project costs and project time, manage services teams, as well as shared services organizations. So a wide variety of applications. And customers here, we have great customer diversity. We have large, well-known customers like Fujitsu, Cornell University, as well as a lot of small companies that also rely on our solutions. Some of our most notable customers include Xerox, Credit Suisse, Moody's. So all of them rely on Replicon to help them with their time and attendance and time tracking needs. So we were going to be discussing compliance today and featuring some of the capabilities of our product. So in that vein, we all know compliance comes in many forms as you're working in your day-to-day jobs, and many of these codes and acronyms here probably have meaning for you. Some of them you might not be as familiar with. Essentially, the requirements and needs come from many different angles. And companies' challenges in meeting these compliances, and actually the problem is more pervasive than people think. Specifically, the Department of Labor estimated that about 7 out of 10 companies are non-compliant in one way or another, especially with regard to wage and hour laws. So non-compliance can have a high price for an organization. According to a consulting report, $2.2 billion in total were paid to settle hour disputes over the last 6 years, bringing that to an average of about $4.8 million. So the costs are high. There's a lot of risk involved if organizations are caught compliant with their processes, not following the regulations that are specific to them. This is also compounded by the fact that you're dealing with multiple regulations, both at the federal level, state level, and oftentimes you have regulations that are specific to your company, or you have union and other obligations that you have to meet. It's not just the cost of the litigation, but also just the cost in itself, specifically for instance, for absence management and time off. A study done by Mercer found that about 35% of all payroll costs are associated with employee absences. So this has to do with the actual costs when they're out, but also losses in productivity and also hiring of workers that need to be hired to take over some of that workload. And so if you think about the fact that this area occupies such a large part of total payroll, it's important to consider that this management area needs to be managed very carefully. You need to be able to give users the ability to request their time off effectively, be able to track, report on it. At the end of the year, specifically now, we're in December year end, it's time to be calculating and be able to report on that for financial statements. So having that visibility and that insight is really important to be able to manage this part effectively. One of the things that Replicon can really help with, our solutions, time tracking solutions, have given our customers many benefits. Key one that we'll be discussing today will be lower compliance risks. So we'll see in the demonstration when Scott walks us through here in a minute how a solution can be used to provide better visibility, better management of absences, of time off, and also of how employees are capturing time in the organization. But in that compliance, other include giving greater visibility into the workforce for organizations, so understanding where their costs are going, and that insight to be able to take actions to more effectively use those resources. And a lot of benefits that come with automation. So just for those that are non-automated systems, this becomes a huge benefit as far as streamlining the process and providing a more optimized processes to be able to handle those various different requirements. Introduction, what I'd like to do now is go ahead and pass it over to my colleague, Scott Baio, who's going to be walking you through the product and letting you see how you can help organizations better manage the compliance for absence management and time attendance. So, Scott, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Armando. Today, for the purposes of this webinar, we're going to use the Replicon TimeAttend product as the backdrop to speak to compliance and potential technology solutions that can help you address some of the concerns related to compliance within your organization. I went ahead and shared my screen out. If you're not able to see that, please let us know in the chat window, and Armando, stop me if the application I've logged into here as an administrator, just so that I can show you all the different aspects of the tool. But Armando put up some numbers earlier in the presentation, and there's significant costs associated with companies not being in compliance. And as a result, when we're talking to customers and potential customers out there, we're talking to them about time capture that's accurate, easy to use, that automates a lot of the work. Here's an example of a time capture setup that we've created for an existing customer. It's grabbing start and stop times. Not only is it an easy and efficient interface for users to use, which means less mistakes, so there's a tendency to be more compliant in that situation, but also you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner that we're calculating that overtime manually. The majority of the costs related to labor compliance is around overtime calculations and not calculating accurately, having a situation where users are having to do those calculations themselves, and all of that manual work really results in a lot of mistakes that could be prevented through the use of a system like Replicon's, where those rules are being applied to a user automatically, which is exactly what's happening here based on the number of hours I worked on Monday, for example. Now, that's not something that's written. The system will support different rules for different users across locations globally or different states legislatively. And the system is smart enough to apply different logic based on users traveling from state to state or jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So that's an important aspect that you want to look for in a tracking tool from a compliance perspective. The other thing you want to consider is configurability. Those rules need to be configurable and flexible enough that as they change over time, you're not left to go back to the company that set them up to reassess them and reprogram them. You need a face like Replicon's where those rules can be defined by yourselves. Not to leave time off completely, we'll also take a look at the time off interface. Right now, this time of year, we're at the point where we have a lot of employees wanting to book time off. They want to put in their Christmas holidays, for example. They are calling HR consistently, asking HR what their balances are and what their who else has taken time off. Wouldn't it be great if we had an environment where the user is constantly aware of what it is they have remaining. They're constantly in communication and visually understanding what it is that other people have taken off. That really eliminates a lot of those calls to HR and supervisors out there. And what Replicon does to help address this is provide a visual interface that couldn't be more intuitive, showing you how other users are taking time off in this period, the statuses of those requests. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, we can also see the number of days they have available as any booked days off that they would have. It's a double-edged sword because HR on this call knows that as soon as you communicate to an employee what their balance is, the next words out of their mouths are, that balance wrong. There's no way I only have 11 days left. And the result, Replicon is also going to tell them where their balance comes from. So the All Balances link here is going to give me a view into what my balances are across all my applicable time off types. It'll let me drill down and understand from almost a bank statement perspective transactionally what has happened, what accruals have taken place, and what has happened over time to give me the balance that I have. So there's no questions, no answers. I call this the argument ending screen. HR will often use this to point users in the right direction as far as where their balances come from and maintain the fact that they are compliant with the time off policies that they've set up and given to users based on their compensation. Okay. The other reason why this is so important when we talk about balances is that when employees leave an organization, the organization is responsible to track the time off that is owed to those employees from a liability perspective. Without an accurate system like Replicon's tracking real-time balances and real-time accruals, you're going to be left in a situation where the balance or the time off liability for a user when they leave is unknown. And it's a scary place for an organization to be, because if you are in a situation where the employee is saying, you owe me 2 weeks vacation, and you know that the employee has taken time off in the year but can't prove it with a system like Replicon, you are left in a situation where you have no choice but to pay out the 2 weeks vacation that's entitled to the employee because you couldn't show historically what days were taken off against that 2 weeks. And Replicon is going to provide that interface and that system. A lot of you are saying, well, that's great. We have a calendar at work. We don't want to log into another tool to see when people are taking time off. And Replicon understands that. The calendar feed functionality within the tool is going to let you push this information out to Outlook. It's going to let you push this to your Google Calendar, your web-based calendar system. And that is going to allow you to see that in your existing calendar without the need to have to go to Replicon and understand what has been taken off or who has taken time off in a shared calendar situation. Okay. Both the timesheet that we saw previously and these requests have to go through some level of an approval. There are times a subjective determination that needs to be made. It's not just about balances, it's about conflicts and other people taking time off, and you want to understand that users are entering their timesheets correctly and in a compliant manner. That is where the workflow and approval will come into play. And as a team leader, I'll have a team tab. Two is left holding the bag when it comes to time off balances and users' time capture. But there's no excuse when you're using Replicon's solution for supervisors, because supervisors are going to have real-time access into all the approvals. Email notifications are going to prompt those supervisors to log into the system and approve that time or time off request. And even before it's submitted, as a supervisor, I have access to all historical timesheets for my team, all historical time off for my team that I've approved. So there's really no excuse for a supervisor to say, I didn't know Scott was taking time off, or I didn't know Scott wasn't submitting his timesheet. To ensure compliance, everybody needs to be on the same page. You cannot have or payroll having to force supervisors to go in and do the approvals and go in and make sure that timesheets are accurate. The system is going to help do that for you. It's going to be emailing the supervisors. Validation rules and overtime rules are going to be calculating whether or not some base defaults are in line with corporate policy before the supervisor even sees the timesheets. The system's going to take a lot of that work on so that your supervisors don't have to do as much, and we're going to try and make it, like the timesheet and time off, as easy and straightforward for supervisors to approve and manage the employees as it is to get the data into the system. Now, obviously, data has flowed through an approval process. We are going to want to ensure a couple of things to get this data out. One, we want to be able to run reports. Reports interface for Replicon provides lots of out-of-the-box reports, but you can create all of your own from scratch. And each one of these reports, whether you create or use the ones that are available, of more configuration and adjustment. So if I was to run this report as is, we'll notice that this report tells me the liability balance of everybody's time off based on today. I could change that to a date in the future. I could change that to a date in the past and understand what the cost of remaining time off is for every user based on a time off code. To ensure that my payouts are correct. It would also help me to ensure my payouts are owed to me. If the user's been able to go to the negative to take his time off, we'll understand if they owe us, which is also important. Any element of this report is customizable, so I can easily go to settings. I can remove some of the grouping to see a more raw output of this information and data. I can add and remove columns. I can move them around to different locations in the report, and I can save and run this report once again. Changes to those settings take effect, and I can take this very raw output and easily get it to Excel and or email or PDF, and all of that applies to all of our report system. You want a system that doesn't lock your data in. You want to use this for analysis. You want to be able to provide this information in instances where you need to comply with auditors. You want to be able to expose this data. You don't want it hidden away, and all the data within Replicon is available for reporting on a regular basis, so there's no need for you to log into the system and do this once you've configured them the way you need. You can simply have them scheduled out to individual users or yourselves as system administrators. Now, the other aspect as far as getting the data out and being compliant is obviously paying your employees in a timely fashion. The payroll screen is really a one-stop shop for payroll administrators. It gives them access to all of the timesheets and time off in the system so they can see what's going on for a given period. Okay. Within that period, they can easily find out what's waiting for approval or if there's any that are overdue and take administrative action to correct those imbalances or maybe that one lagging timesheet that needs to be pushed through before payroll. With the statuses, they're going to use the Export tab. And the Export tab for them, again, is their way of getting data out of Replicon and into a pay system, in this case ADP, but that's not a limit of the system. We could be going to Ceridian. We could be going to Millennium. We could be going to Paychex. All of those payroll systems provide an interface to allow you to upload this data so that you don't, again, have to worry about data entry errors. Those same manual calculations that you were doing historically to determine overtime, we also run the risk of inaccuracy when we're manually entering this data in. So from a compliance perspective, we want to take the accurate calcs directly from a file that's been generated like this and import them into your payroll to prevent any data entry errors. You'll be able to okay them once they're there, but we don't want a manual process getting in the way and potentially contributing to more errors and issues. Okay. Find that from a compliance issue and an auditability perspective, you're going to want access to all your historical data, and all of that information is accurately stored in the system for check back and reference from an archive perspective. Armando, I know there's a lot of people on the line, and I want to allow time for questions, so I want to kind of stop there, take pause, and see if we can start drilling into some of the questions that have come up while I've been going through the tool this morning.
Great overview. Yes, let's go ahead and do that. So everyone, please, if you have any questions, feel free to submit them on the Q&A box, and Scott and I will be happy to address them here. So please go ahead and do that now. And looking at the Q&A panel now. Question here from Sue, who asks, does the Replicon system track international holidays or any kind of other types of holidays?
It does, and I'm glad you asked that. I should have pointed out on the calendar interface that we were seeing when users are booking their time off, I was seeing Christmas, but obviously that may not be a holiday that's celebrated globally. International holiday calendars are supported by default within the system with several countries previously set up. Then you also have the ability to go in and customize those calendars for your organization. You may acknowledge extra holidays as a result of your company policy. Replicon is a great example of that. Our U.S. office has some additional holidays so that the employees in the United States get as many holidays as the Canadian employees within the organization. So there's a lot of flexibility there as far as tracking international holidays.
Great question from Kimberly. How customizable is the accrual period? My company accrues 1.5 days per month worked. Is that something that Replicon can calculate?
That Replicon can calculate. The accrual policies are very flexible and very configurable, and they don't require programming. So what you're actually able to do is go in and define that policy as you mentioned, where you would say monthly accrue at 1.5 days or a number of hours. You define whether you're accruing in days or hours, and it would reset that balance at a certain period of time, allow you to carry forward a certain amount. It'll allow you to go to the negative a certain amount if you want to, and then not only that, but it also adjusts for anniversary dates or years. So as an employee with your organization has been there longer, the system will automatically adjust their accrual rate based on that. So you can have senior employees earning more automatically as their tenure within the organization increases.
I have a question from Kelly who asks, what kind of Replicon is being used in the demo? I'll be happy to take that one, and I think a few other people also asked a similar question. So we're looking, right now we're showcasing the latest release of Replicon. It's got the TimeAttend product as well as Time Off product, and this is the latest version that was released as of July of 2013 of this year. And so if you're an existing customer with Kelly, you might be and are interested in knowing more information about how to migrate to this latest version, which we're calling Gen 3, please feel free to contact your account manager or anybody at Replicon. That goes to any customer here who is interested in learning more about this release. We've added a lot of enhancements. You've noticed that. I'm sure many people have noticed that the user interface has been improved and is easier to use. So please reach out to us. Next question here is from Christy, who asks, does Replicon work with the payroll provider Paylocity?
Paylocity, like every other payroll vendor that is out there, does support the import of information. So it's instead of running ADP export as I was, you would run the Paylocity export, and it would generate a Paylocity formatted file. And typically, all of these payroll files are very close from a formatting perspective. We would make a couple of Paylocity, and then you would be able to import it directly without having to do the data entry there.
And Aaron also asking about interfacing with ADP. I think that as the same applies. We basically can integrate with many different providers, leveraging the same flat file interface. The other questions here, Philip, is there any training webinars for Replicon to learn how to set up overtime rules and vacation rules? We do, Philip, have a series of webinars. If you're a customer, you can go to our customer zone, which is available on our website, and we continuously run a series of training webinars for many of our products that go through a lot of the setup and the rules and the training. If you go there, or you can feel free to please contact your account manager or reach out to Replicon, and we can give you more details about that. So let's questions, please. Please feel free to keep submitting your questions, and we'll be addressing them here. Here's a he asks, can we manage exceptions to our time off policy for specific employees?
No, we can absolutely, Jack. Although the system does allow for policies to be set up, those are simply the defaults as users are created, or as those policies are updated, we can apply them to users en masse. But it does allow for exceptions. So you could go into a user that has, for example, when they were hired and they don't get the default time off, they get an extra 2 days or they get an extra week vacation. And you can adjust for that user on a per user basis, any of those exceptions that creep into the hiring process.
And then I have another question here that asks, does the time off module, is it part of TimeAttend and TimeBill? So the time off capabilities, the absence management capabilities, are part of the TimeAttend solution. They are automatically part of TimeBill. However, they can be included as an add-on. So you are able to use those capabilities and use them with TimeBill as well. Here is from, and she said, we have clear policies around the time off liabilities that we can carry. How can visibility into what our current liability is to manage it better?
Point. So you remember the report that that I brought up, the time off liability report is able to provide that information for 2 reasons. One, we store information related to the employee salary or wage within the user profile within the system. And because those accruals are being done real time, in the future, we'll at any point to give you an accurate value of the liability and what it will be, taking all of the user's time off into consideration, even that has been booked into the future. So it's really through that liability reporting, and we can schedule that report to go to your financials on a regular basis, so you can keep tabs on it.
Question also from Peggy. Question, does interface with QuickBooks, and also a question about interfacing with HRIS system from somebody else, so you can just kind of address both.
It does interface with QuickBooks and with HRIS systems, and they both really do some things in common. So what we looked at when we're exporting that data out to go to a payroll system, it's generating a file that we can upload into those payroll systems. But with QuickBooks and with HRIS systems, there's actually a 2-way programming interface that we can use to get any data in or out of our product. So from an HRIS perspective, we're often doing is as a user is created there, we're also creating that user in our tool just through programming calls, so we don't have to do manual data entry. Then, from a QuickBooks perspective, there's also a time tracking component within QuickBooks, so we can take that time and push it back out to QuickBooks. If you're using one of our project tools, we can also push service items over and other job codes associated with those back to QuickBooks, so that you can do your invoicing and billing there and take care of your payroll through QuickBooks if that's what you're doing today.
Okay. We reached the end of our time here, so I don't see any other questions in the Q&A panel. But if any of you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. So at this point, what I'd like to do is, Scott, thank you for a fantastic overview demo of Replicon. And thank you to everyone who joined us today to listen to this webinar. We hope that it was helpful and you were able to take something helpful away from it. And please, if you have any more questions or you want to learn more about our Replicon solutions, please contact us to learn more at info@replicon.com. If you're an existing customer, please feel free to reach out to your account manager as well if you'd like to discuss any of this. So thank everyone for joining, and have a great day.